there's a couple things that bring me hope. The amount of people that are showing up to these protests for Renee, but also just different types of protests that we've seen, no kings, but also seeing a slight shift in our voter registration numbers. I would say, children that are joining our chapters that want to get involved.
Welcome back to Around the Districts podcast. Today we have Jacob George here, and we're going to get right into it and talk about grassroots organization.
Mm-hmm.
So why does grassroots organizing matter so much in Arizona right now?
Yeah, I mean, grassroots organizing is probably going to be one of the most effective ways to really get people out to vote and to persuade them. There's a couple issues, I think, where we went wrong in 2024. One of those is that we really kind of hired people from out of the state to come and do organizing and knocking on doors. And in my opinion, why should somebody from, Pennsylvania be telling an Arizonan what they should care about? And so if we're going to do this, we have to do it, actually grassroots. Neighbors talking to neighbors, or even relational organizing, reaching out to your contact list about, why this is important, or, vice versa. And so it's going to really matter, especially when our elections are this close in this state. And so it's going to be very different from past election cycles, especially if we don't get our voter registration numbers up as well.
Yeah, I feel like the grassroots effort is the most important, right? Because donors can give money all they want, and the money doesn't always translate to votes. We know that, right?
We know that from Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Especially in Wisconsin.
Exactly.
And you got to have that persuasion too. You got to, and not be afraid to even knock on some independent or Republican doors. These conversations really do matter, and we have to have them. Or we just won't be able to win elections.
Do you think that people fear having these conversations?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I fear them all the time.
I don't fear having a conversation. I fear the door-to-door knocking because we're in marginalized groups, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, for people that look like me, it'd be a little bit harder to knock on somebody's door, and somebody not suspect, something like I just wouldn't. If I know they're MAGA, I'm just not.
Yeah, no,
because I don't want
people have guns.
I don't want to get killed.
Right.
So
don't recommend going up to anyone with a Trump flags.
So those hard conversations, like, they're hard, right? So if you're knocking on doors, but what besides canvassing and knocking on doors, what other grassroots efforts are there? Like, do you have like a town hall, or like what would Unity Rising or support moving forward?
Yeah, so one thing that we like to do, we also do, so we do voter registration in the high schools. So each chapter has to do one voter registration drive per school year, and it's partisan voter registration. So they really try to get people to register as a Democrat. The second thing they have to do is a community service project. And so during that community service project, it can be kind of whatever they want to do, but it is in essence, it's like relational organizing. So it's saying if they want to go clean up, trash off the side of the street one day, or help out their school, they can do that. And people are like, oh, look, that chapter is really putting their money where their mouth is, to say, and they're actually helping out the community. And so if we can do things like that and have people associate good things with, like, the Democratic Party, of, like, if they see, like, the Democrats picking up trash, they're going to associate good things with that, right? And so it's really that kind of that relational organizing aspect. Also, digital is something that we're going to be very kind of honed in on, especially with young people.
Like you said too, like scheduling events and picnics, and like the Democratic Party used to do, getting back involved in the community, like you should, talking to people and getting involved, and even maybe town halls, like having more town halls. I think having town halls helped a lot, because I'd never been to a town hall before, and I went to Greg Stanton's. I went to one with oh gosh, help me, the mayor of Tempe.
Oh, Corey Woods.
Corey
Yeah.
Woods. I saw one with him. Like I never would have gone to one of those before, but having them and listening to them talk was,
Yeah, or legislative district meetings,
Yeah.
inviting
the
your
LD
neighbor to
meetings,
a
yeah.
LD meeting.
Well, and that's
Something like that.
partisan,
Right.
but the town halls can be nonpartisan,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
somebody like a mayor of a city is going to be for all constituents,
Mhm.
not just whatever party they associate with. And so, to me, those are the conversations. Like, if we could come to that, talking to people and getting to a common ground versus trying to persuade somebody to be on a certain side,
Mhm.
I think we would get farther.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we start with the younger voters. Is
Mhm.
not necessarily trying to persuade them,
Right.
but to get to what matters to them.
Right. Exactly.
So, and I think,
agree with that.
do you agree with that?
I
Because
totally
Or
agree
to
with
get them to express what matters to them
Yeah.
to your
Or
representative.
like listening
Good point.
tours, for
Yeah.
example.
Listening tours. But you really got to listen.
Yeah, you
Because
can't
some
just,
people will say listening and they're not listening.
and then,
Yeah.
yeah, and then they start talking, and then
They're not listening to what matters to the voters. So you said that earlier, like you said something about what mattered to younger voters, and I feel like the Democratic Party. I'm just going to speak on that. Maybe Republican, but I'm not associated, so I can't speak on that. But listening to what the voters are saying
Mhm.
instead of recycling the same issues. And I think, and help me understand this from your perspective. I've lived in Arizona for 14 years, and what I see are the same people
Mhm.
in and out of election cycles, sort of recycling them. And there's nothing wrong with that because we need that knowledge.
Mhm.
But we also need
You-
to like succession planning
right.
in the Democratic Party.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Where
I think that goes for all levels of government and all positions. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty, I mean, obviously we see 80 something year olds in positions, in
It's a
the,
good point.
Yeah.
you
In
know what I mean?
Congress.
In,
Walking down
right,
the
in
stairs.
Congress, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
how, like, I think that obviously we need term limits for that, but yeah, I think, and not only that, but once you term limit in one position, you move to another. So yeah, when you talk about recycling, yeah, but we definitely need to see younger people running.
Well, because
think-
things have changed. But
Yeah, and I think it's also up to like, people that have been in this industry for so long to
Mhm.
really kind of get in and try to bring up the younger people.
mentor.
And mentor. And that's
Yeah.
my mentor,
Yeah.
Catherine Miranda. She was like the first mentor that I ever had. She really just kind of really tried to show me different things.
Yep.
And so I think it's really important that we have those people also trying to bring up the next generation as well.
That mentorship is key.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And teaching people the ropes so
Mhm.
that they can then move into whatever position they want to move into.
Right.
But if we keep recycling the same people and thinking like what happened 10 years ago still matters today, I mean, it's different
different,
perspective,
yeah.
right?
And you have to really listen to understand, not just listen to respond. Which I feel like that's kind of what we've been doing, is just listening to respond and not really understanding what people are saying.
What would you tell the Democratic leaders right now in Arizona? Like, what would you tell them to do, or talking points for them in order to get the younger voters back into the party?
Right. Well, one thing I kind of like, we've talked about this max exodus of men from the Democratic Party. The last person I was able to really kind of think about that actually brought in men to the Democratic Party was Bernie Sanders, with Bernie Bros, all that stuff. And I know a lot of people that actually, voted for Bernie Sanders and then went to Donald Trump. So I would say, one thing that the Arizona Democratic
But why?
Party,
Go back to that.
I think
How
it's
do you go from Bernie Sanders?
So far.
I think
So
it's
far
I think
opposite.
it's populism in a sense, but when you hear Bernie Sanders speak, he's really talking about, hey, this is an issue that you are experiencing. You don't have, you can't afford college, you can't afford rent, you can't afford any of these, these things, and especially for young people that are trying to plan their lives, that's crucial to them. And so Donald Trump kind of had that same talking point, like, yeah, this is, this way because of this person or this person, giving someone else to blame. Now, I don't think Bernie did that, but definitely Trump did that.
But I don't think that once Trump is gone, that they'll vote for Vance or even anyone
I don't
you know,
think so
Trump
either.
adjacent. I think it was they were voting specifically
On the
for
person.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They weren't voting for the Republican Party. They were voting for him.
I agree with that.
But there were and the reason is because he was authentically himself, whether we like him or not.
Correct.
Exactly.
Like
Correct.
he's going to be him, and to
Yep.
me, he doesn't. He discriminates, but
Right.
he does it so based
Openly.
on money too. Like,
Yeah,
if you're
he's-
not a certain class or money, I mean, don't matter if you're a
he's
white.
openly
Right.
just- and so but to answer your question, what can the Democratic Party do? I know that the Arizona Democratic Party, we just adopted the second Bill of Rights by FDR, which basically just says that everyone deserves a quality education, housing, food, all the basic necessities. And so I think the National Democrats should also kind of adopt
on
that
those.
and really just focus on the issues that matter to working families.
Right. I think that's a key point. I have a question though, just getting back to white men leaving the Republican or MAGA movement.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is an issue with, we know that there's a decline in birth rates,
Yeah.
and then we know that there's a decline in I think Hispanics or somebody's going to take over the population in the
Yeah, they're
United
scared.
States, right?
Right.
Do you think that fear is driving part of that?
I think fear is absolutely driving it. And we're even seeing it with a lot of, young men having kind of this, this incel or woman hate type of, attitude. And, I think there's a lot of, men also they mature slower than women.
Boy, we know.
Like 30 years?
So they mature.
Wait,
slow-
do you ever mature?
So we're
No,
seeing.
kidding.
So what we're seeing is women are graduating at higher rates than men. They're entering more, I would say, corporate jobs than men. Out of 25% of new home buyers are single women. So we're seeing more women actually enter into the market of housing, and just the investment market as well. And so I think a lot of these men are kind of feeling left behind. And so when you've been this dominant, throughout so much history or whatever, and now you're having these fear tactics of people saying, "Oh, women are coming for your jobs."
Well, they're losing control. Not
Right,
only are
they're
they being
losing
replaced by minorities, but they're being replaced by
A woman.
minorities and women. So
And the most highly educated
Right.
are Black women
Right.
in this
Yep.
country.
Yeah. And
So it's
so
even worse.
yeah. And so when you have all these things, I feel it is, like you said, it's a loss of control that they have. And so I think the best way to deal with that is you just have to, talk about things that they can control or talk about working class issues. But there's only goes for so far until, you can't. What are you gonna say? Women can't work? Like,
Yeah.
like no, you're
Well,
not. gonna
yes,
do that.
yes.
Well, they want to actually.
Project
So
2025.
yeah.
It's not so long ago that women could not have their own bank
Right.
accounts. Women could not
70s,
get a
yeah.
credit card. Could not. I mean, my mom,
Couldn't
your
go without
your
their-
parents couldn't
couldn't go
couldn't
without their
vote.
husband.
Couldn't buy a house without their
Right.
husband. I mean, my mom couldn't buy a house, couldn't buy a car, couldn't have a bank account
Right.
without her father or your mom either.
Yeah.
Without having a husband or her father sign for it.
Which is
That was
not
not that long ago.
It was only in
Like,
the 70s.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
So I mean, it is when they talk about bringing it back to the golden age, bringing it back to the 50s.
Yeah,
like
exactly
that's
what they
they're-
want.
That's what they're talking about.
I mean, it's scaled out in Project
Yeah.
2025.
It is
The-
spelled out.
If you look
yes.
at the trend and the rights that they want to take away, it impacts women, it impacts minorities.
Right.
Mhm.
It doesn't impact the white male
Right.
No.
in any capacity.
Not one
And
bit.
so if you want to go back to that time era, that's what they're aiming for. If
Right.
you read Project 2025, you would know, even though I know it was 900 and some pages, but it's worth the read because now you know the direction
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they're trying to take the company, and knowledge is power.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to understand what's happening in order to fight it.
Well,
Yeah.
why do you think they're trying to go after education so hard? They don't want an educated,
Right. Right.
They want a workforce like
Right.
worker bees.
Right.
They don't want a workforce that has critical thinking skills.
Right.
And I
exactly.
think that that's been happening for many, many years. That's when they start taking government out of schools and like people understanding how the three branches of government actually
Mhm.
work. That's why we have what we have today, because people don't understand that.
Right.
So Well, tell us this: what brings you, or what gives you hope? For what's coming along. Especially we're in an election year.
Yeah.
So what brings you hope?
Um, there's a couple things that bring me hope. I would say one of the things is seeing the amount of people that are showing up to these protests for Renee, that was murdered by
Renee Good.
ICE.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say that's one thing that brings me hope, but also just different types of protests that we've seen, throughout the whole 2025, with No Kings, but also seeing, kind of a slight shift in our voter registration numbers is bringing me a little hope as well. But also just, I would say, children that are showing up to some of these protests, that are joining our chapters that want to get involved, I would say is bringing me hope as well, because, the next generation is going to be powerful, and we have to uplift them and make sure that, we leave a better place for them behind.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I feel like the last few races that we've had nationally
Yep.
have been a very good turnout for
Definitely.
the Democratic Party.
Way
Yes.
overperforming polls.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the people registering, like you said, and standing in line to vote, that's positive. We'll see how that continues to trend throughout the year.
And some Democrats are starting to fight back.
Yeah.
I
would like to see more.
I would like to see a lot more.
I think we will. I think we
But
will.
like what
see
Gavin
more.
Newsom's
Yeah.
been doing with those tweets and all of
He is
that.
awesome.
Yeah, I've been loving it. So
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Yeah. So I would like to see more of that, and going, redistricting California if they want to play those games in other states, and we'll do it in ours as well.
Yeah.
I would like
Well,
to see Democrats fight
even
back.
with it, not even just Democrats, but with Jerome Powell and him fighting back, and Tom Tillis saying that he would not approve anybody going into the Fed. So I mean, I think we're gonna start seeing more people fighting back, because
We've
we're
gotten out of control.
things are getting out of control and
Way out of
spiraling,
control.
and it's people are fighting back. People are fighting back, and I think we're gonna see it. So there are things that are hopeful. It's definitely a positive, although so many negative things have happened just such a short time into 2026. But we're going to see some positive change going into this.
So if listeners want to support Unity Rising or get involved, what's the best place to start?
Go to our website, unityrisingusa.org. If you know anyone that's high school age, tell them to start a chapter. We have a huge button on there that says start a chapter. It helps you. We walk you through the process. We support the chapter. We get them education materials on how to vote, all of that fun stuff. And obviously we're always taking money. So go ahead and feel free to do that as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Jacob.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So informative. And you're doing such a positive thing for voters and for Arizona. And we really appreciate that.
Well,
Thank you for breaking barriers.
Breaking barriers. Yes. A lot of them. And even at such a young age, breaking barriers and doing something for your community and for other kids in the future is huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing.
You're a
and
good example.
You're a very good example. Yeah.
Thanks.
And as we head into 2026 and an election year, the work happening right now, especially with Unity Rising and on the grassroots level, is so important and will shape the future for working families, educators, and students across Arizona. So we've had a great conversation with Jacob today. So support Unity Rising. If you want or have children or want to start a chapter, please go to his website. We'll have that all in the show notes, but please like, share, comment, and let us know what you think. And thank you so much for joining us on the Around the Districts podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.